Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at some of the training games that supposedly have been played between Richard Rapport and Ding Liren prior to this great and very exciting World Chess Championship match that is taking place right now. Now, those of you guys who are wondering, there's a lot of stuff to unpack, so we'll try to dive right into the action. So, first things first, we're going to look at the game that sort of started it all. Now, this morning during this game that was played between Ding Liren and Jan Nepomniachtchi, we had this, of course, this classic Nimzo-Indian opening where they reached this critical position after move number 9 with this very important move, rook to a2. Now, those of you guys who watched my recap earlier on the main channel, GMHikaru, you will notice, of course, that this move is an original move. Now, the reason that everyone sort of started putting the puzzle pieces together of Ding Liren and Richard Rapport and how they were working together on this opening is the fact that after this critical move, when you go to the Lichess database, you see entirely one singular game played between F. Vitelli and OPQRSTUV. Not quite sure how you pronounce it. At any rate, this is the game that led to all the speculation. Now, I'm going to go over quite a few of the games. There are 72 games in total. I won't go over all of them, but I will look at some of the openings and explain why I am 99.99% sure that these were games that were played in advance of the World Championship match and as preparation for Ding Liren to try and beat Jan Nepomniachtchi. So let's move right along. First game we're going to be looking at is this game where we have, of course, OPQRSTUV with a white piece against F. Vitelli. Game starts with d4, knight to f6. We get c4, e6, knight f3, d5, and h3. Now, as you guys know, this was, of course, essayed by Ding Liren in the match earlier. He played this, I believe, in game number 4, his second game with the white pieces. He played this h3 move. First piece of sort of circumstantial evidence that we have this most likely is Ding Liren and Richard Rapport. First and foremost, because this is not the only game. They played several games in this variation, and this is not a line that is played all that frequently. And so when you have it popping up in random games between 1500s, who of course 1500s are not opening theoreticians, are not connoisseurs of the opening phase of the game, it's very, very suspicious. First game, we get h3. Now let's keep moving along. Rather than diving into all the specifics, I will explain why this is so important. So next game we have is a game where F. Vitelli playing again with the white pieces against OPQRSTUV, and we get the following moves. We get c4 played here. We get e5, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, and queen c2. Now this, of course, is very similar to the game that was played between Ding and Jan earlier in the match. I believe this was game number 6, which Ding did win with the white pieces. Now, in that game, the moves e3, bishop b4, and queen c2 were played, so it was a little bit different. Nonetheless, it's a very critical variation. It's a line that has not been played yet, and it's definitely something that Ding could be intending to use to try and spring as a surprise on Jan here, and therefore, it's really, really critical. So, let's keep moving along. So, this is the second opening, which is a little bit of a surprise, not the main opening, but we'll keep going along. Next game, of course, we have this move e4 being played. We have e4, we have e5 being played here, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now bishop b5 and knight f6. Now this game is a little bit more unclear. We don't know whether it's something where Ding was preparing for the black side or whether it was perhaps in case Jan Nepomniachtchi chose to spring the Berlin defense when he himself had the black piece. Maybe Ding intending to go e4. Now this is very, very critical because Ding, as we look through these games, you'll see there are many different openings that he's looking to play. We see d4, we see c4, and now we see e4 here. So I don't know which side this is with, whether it's with white or with black. We don't really know. My best guess is that since we see d6 and bishop e7 being played, probably this is something Ding intended to play with the black pieces as opposed to playing, say, bishop to c5, which I think is what Jan would probably normally play if he was playing the Berlin defense himself, since he tries to play more active variations. But again, we don't know. All right, let's keep moving along. Next game that we have here is a game, once again, where we get the classic Italian opening here. We get the classic Gucci piano here with bishop to c5 being played. And those of you guys who are familiar with the Gucci piano, it's an opening that's been played by Ding with the black and the white pieces. Very aggressive opening. But in general, this whole line with a6 and bishop to a7 is something that Ding has played in the past. So I strongly suspect his intention is to play bishop a7 if Jan chooses to play the Gucci piano. Now, once again, we are pretty early in the match. There's still many, many more games to go, but nonetheless, Jan's trainers and seconds are going to be looking through these games very, very carefully, trying to pick some holes here, see what Ding was playing in these games, and go from there. Next game up we have is a game that features the anti-marshal. Now, once again, this is an opening that is featured heavily in this match already. I think it was played in 2 different games here. It's also worth noting that Jan played this with the white piece against Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match a couple years back. So it's an opening that's very topical. I suspect that a4 bishop b7 is something that Ding prepared with the black pieces here. It's something that's considered very, very solid. So once again, we're seeing this format of all these different openings that either have been played by Ding with the white or the black pieces, but more importantly, they're in very specific variations which have already featured in this World Championship match. So this is the next game. Let's keep moving along. Now this game is sort of the game that to me really starts to define a lot of how I look at everything in terms of why I'm convinced. Now in this game we have a King's Indian attack being played here by the player with the white pieces, and what you see that in this position you have knight bd2, we have c5, e4, knight c6, and rook e1. Now it's worth noting, of course, King's Indian attack, it's a very solid opening. You can try to play it for the win. Richard Rapport himself actually played this against me in the FIDE Grand Prix in Berlin last year. So it's an opening that fits in Richard's wheelhouse. Not necessarily something that Ding Liren has played all that frequently, but nonetheless, it is relevant in terms of if Jan's trainers are looking at these games, they're thinking, okay, maybe Ding wants to play the King's Indian attack. Now it's also very important to note another critical point in terms of the opening phase is it is very, very abundantly clear that Ding in his preparation is looking to dodge the Catalan opening. He's trying very, very hard to dodge a Catalan. We see this King's Indian attack. And one of the reasons we play the King's Indian attack is because d4 castle c4 leads to the Catalan. Now, Ding has played it many, many times. Nepo had to face it several times in his previous World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen. So another example of a try to avoid all the mainline theory in the Catalan. Now this is also important because for Jan, none of these games as far as I've seen actually feature the Catalan, so it takes away one of the big weapons in terms of what you're worried about as far as preparation goes. So this is a King's Indian attack game. Now next up, this game, by the way, to be clear, is probably the game that makes me 99% sure that this has to be Ding and Rapport and training for the World Championship, because this game features e4, e5, knight f3, and knight f6. Now we know very clearly Ding Liren, he maybe has played the Petrov in the past, but not frequently, whereas his opponent, Jan Nepomniachtchi, I should say, has been playing the Petrov for the last several years, pretty much nonstop. It's his main weapon against e4, e5, knight f3. And this also features a very, very topical line here with this d4, d5, bishop d3, bishop d6. There was a game of the candidates last year between Fabiano Caruana and Jan Nepomniachtchi in this variation, so it's very, very topical. This queen b3, queen d7 line, it's been played many, many times at the top level by many different players. There are multiple games that have been played between these two players in this variation, and once again, for random 1500s to be playing this mainline theory and all these different openings, completely, I would say not completely, just flat out impossible. So once again, we get a window into one of Ding's ideas of playing with the white pieces, which is to play this variation of the Petrov with rook e1 and queen b3. Again, going to be very, very hard to make this work. You have to be very, very concrete with how you approach it, and it's another opening surprise that now Ding will almost certainly not be able to use, because Nepo's trainers will be looking at this and they will tell him, review your files on this specific variation. So it's another example of why it's really, really a big loss for Ding to have these games being out there. Next game we have is a game once again where we get this Nimzo-Indian once again. We get this knight c3, bishop b4, castle a3 takes, and this time this game features c5, bishop d3, knight c6, and rook b1. Now once again, rook b1 has been played in this position, but it is not a main line. In this position, normally most games continue with knight to e2, b6, e4, and then this move knight to e8, and white can either castle, white can play h4 like Gukesh did against me, and there are many different possibilities. Nonetheless, rook b1 is not a very common move, so this is another great idea that Ding probably has had in the bag as possibly a surprise in case Nepo played c5 and knight c6. Now, as we know in the game, we saw d6, knight 6, knight g3, and then we saw this rook a2 idea. I guess the bishop on f1 to be fair, so a little bit different. Nonetheless, very, very similar idea in case Nepo plays c5, knight 6. Now, we don't really know whether Ding actually prepared this specifically, whether he would use it, but now if Nepo wants to switch up his lines and play c5 and knight 6, there's a good chance that Ding's big idea here was to play rook b1 and surprise Nepo, and now with the cat being out of the bag, he will no longer be able to use this idea with any effectiveness, because Nepo's trainers will show him the line, they'll make files, they'll work on this all night long, and it's another great idea that is simply gone forever. He will not be able to play it. So this is another example of a very important idea that Ding probably has in reserve and could try again later in the match, but now of course Nepo will be ready, he will review it, and it probably will not be played. So another game that we have here, which is quite interesting, is we have this Nimzo-Indian with knight f3 and bishop g5. Now once again, another idea in the Nimzo-Indian. It's very clear looking through these games that Ding's approach to the match is very simple. First of all, he wants to have a couple of ideas. Obviously, he used this H3 idea already in the match, so he can't use it again. He's now played the Nimzo-Indian with knight f3, knight c3, e3, and a3 a couple of times. He's played it once. Obviously, with these games, Nepo will be ready for this. So now where could you default? Well, you could also have another Nimzo idea with knight to f3 and bishop g5. But once again, in this situation, as we'll see, this whole idea with knight c6 and queen f4, Nepo's trainers will see this, they will look at this, and this is another Nimzo idea that is completely gone now for the match. Ding probably cannot play it and get away with this idea. So there's another great concept that is just lost again because you will not be able to play it. It will have zero surprise value, and Nepo will be 100% ready for this knight f3 bishop g5 line. So now as we move along to another game, I'm trying to go fairly quickly here so we don't get bogged down too deep into the weeds. We have another English here. Now this English turns into an anti-Catalan. This also is very critical because now we see that what Ding is looking for is Ding wants to dodge the Catalan. He does not want to go into the mainline Catalan lines with d4 because he's worried about Nepo's prep either for this match or even from the previous match against Magnus. And so we know now that Ding wants to avoid it. So how do you avoid the Catalan? Well, obviously you have ideas like in this game where you can play b3. This is one example. You can also play other ideas like instead of going c4, you can play another anti-Catalan line here with castles, bishop e7, d3, knight b d2, and e4, playing the kings in the attack. Now, as we've seen, there are already games in that. So it's very, very clear looking at these games. The Ding's strategy is to try to get Nepo a little bit out of his opening repertoire, try to surprise him, but definitely to avoid the Catalan. Now, this could cut the other way, of course. Ding could now say, well, you know what, all these games are out there, I'm going to suddenly play the Catalan instead, since as far as I can tell there aren't any games in the Catalan itself. So Ding could actually try to flip the switch, but nonetheless it's very clear at this present time that Ding does not want to go into the Catalan. Very, very clear. So next game we have is an important game. Now, sorry that I accidentally leaked the moves for this game already from the start. We have d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, c4, c6, and h3. Now, this line, I don't know if this in case Ding and or Rapport think that Nepo might play the Slav defense here with d5 and c6. I don't really know, but it's the only thing I can think of because obviously h3 is a fairly random move once again. Now, it's not impossible to play it, but it's not the main line. That is for sure. So this game, I'm assuming, is just in case Nepo tries to surprise him with the Slav and he has his H3 idea ready once again. Now, as I said, it's impossible for two 1500s to be playing this. It's very clear these are strong grandmasters looking at mainline cutting edge theory. So this game, I guess, is in case Jan surprises him with the Slav. Again, very unlikely, but of course it could happen, obviously, because there are a lot of Russian influences in terms of Nepo's trainers. Many of them have played the Slav over the years. So next game that we have, of course, is this game, which is played in the Najdorf Sicilians. So we get this move, we get this move e4 being played here, c5, and now we get knight to f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, a6, and h3. Now this one, I again don't know which side it's being looked at. I'm assuming this is from the white side for Ding. I don't really see Ding playing the Najdorf in this match per se. Now, mind you, Nepo is a lifetime Najdorf player. He has played it, so I suspect this h3 thing was just simply prep, and he intends to play h3 and g4 against Nepo's setups. But of course, it could be the other way because Nepo himself has played h3 in the past against the Najdorf with the white pieces. Nonetheless, I suspect that this was an idea for what Ding wanted to play against Nepo if he has the white pieces. So moving along, we have one more game that I think is very critical, and this game is without a doubt shows that this is Ding Loren's account. We get d4 here. We have knight f6, knight to f3, d5, bishop to f4, e6, knight bd2. Now again, we have a London system here. Now they're again looking at all these openings, seeing the anti-Catalans, seeing these early h3s which have already been played, seeing these Nimzo lines which have also been played now in the World Championship match. There is no doubt in my mind after seeing the London system as well. We've now seen three of the four openings that Ding has played in this match so far being essayed in these online games between the two players. So there's no doubt in my mind that this is Ding Loren's account. Whether it's Richard Rapport remains to be seen. Nonetheless, very, very damaging in general because we've now seen all these different opening ideas that Ding has come up with, and they have been completely leaked to the public. Everybody is aware of these games now. They're aware of these opening ideas. Nepo's trainers are going to be looking, frankly, top grandmasters are going to be looking to see if they can use these ideas with either color as well. So all in all, this is very, very, very bad news for Team Ding. Ding is currently down by a point in the match. He only has a couple more white games left. And with all these ideas being out there, it's really hard to know what Ding is going to do. Because again, when I think about what Ding did today, he played this Nimzo-Indian. Now, if you think about it from Ding's perspective, he figures, okay, well, I have two ideas. Maybe I can play E3 here with like Bishop D. Maybe I can play E3, A3. And I can still use this this Rook B1 idea possibly down the road if I find improvement on today's game. Additionally, as I said before, he could also think, well, you know what? I used one Nimzo idea. Maybe now I can play Knight F3 and Bishop G5. But again, this idea is now out there too. So this is another Nimzo idea that he can't play. So what exactly does he have left in the Nimzo? Now, I didn't look at all the different games, of course, because there's 72 different games. There are many more on chess.com as well. But if you don't have this Knight F3, Bishop G5, there was also a game with E3, Knight F3. So Nepo's team will be looking at this as well. So what do you get left with? You now have two ideas in the Nimzo-Indian that you might have been able to use down the road that most likely you can't use. So now can you even play the Nimzo-Indian itself and surprise Nepo? Probably not. So he loses this weapon in being able to play the Nimzo-Indian most likely. Now, of course, you could try to play something like the you could try to play a King's Indian attack, but again, Nepo is probably going to be ready for it. Additionally, we've now seen that Ding also has been looking at this line B3 to avoid it. And so where do you even look for opening surprises? Very, very difficult. Additionally, maybe Ding thought, you know what? I'm going to surprise Nepo with E4. I've got this big idea in the Petrov where I play this line with D4, Bishop D3, castles, C4, C6, Rook E1, Bishop F5, and Queen B3. But again, Nepo's obviously looked at these lines many, many times, and he's just going to review the file. So you also lose your Petrov idea. So this is three great ideas potentially that Ding cannot use now in the match. And so this is a huge blow in terms of the overall match strategy. Obviously, Ding trailing by 1 point since he failed to win the game today. And I think this is going to make it very, very hard for Ding going forward. I think psychologically, to have all these ideas and now having to double check, see what you've actually played online is also going to be a nightmare, because now Richard Rapport and the rest of Ding's team, they're going to have to go back, look through these hundreds of games and try to figure out which ideas do they have, which have not been played, because as we know, Nepo is a full team of trainers, at least 4 or 5 people who are working for him. And I think because of that, it's going to be very, very difficult for Ding to recover and try to find a way to come back. At any rate, it will be very interesting going forward to see what idea Ding uses in his next white game. Now, he will have black in game number 9, but in game number 10, he will have the white pieces once again after a rest day. And I think with a rest day, at least, they can try to stabilize, they can try to figure it out. But Ding still has to survive for his tomorrow with the black pieces just to get to the rest day and have the white pieces. At any rate, it's going to be a wild ride. Hopefully this doesn't change too much, but I do think that for Ding, it's going to make it a very, very difficult uphill battle going forward to try and win this match with all his preparation being leaked. At any rate, you guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already, and we'll keep bringing you all the greatest content here on YouTube. Have a great one, everybody. Bye.